A warm welcome to all. Thank you for joining with us in today's live session. What do you need to be an entrepreneur by NIT Rourkela Alumni Association in partnership with WAB. I would like to introduce our speaker, Chinmoy Mishra, founder and CEO, Hooliv. With over 20 years of experience working with several MNCs across geographies, he is a serial entrepreneur and founder of Hooliv. Prior to Hooliv, Chinmoy founded AllizHealth, at present one of Asia's leading healthcare technology ventures. Chinmoy has an MBA from the prestigious Babson College, Boston, where he was honored with the Babson Fellowship and Global Student Leadership Awards. Chinmoy takes great pride in the fact that he started his own venture from the garage and now serving clients across geographies and creating significant value for all stakeholders. We warmly welcome you, Chinmoy, sir.
Thank you, Vanita. Really appreciate the warm welcome.
I guess we can start, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Vanita, and thank you everyone for joining. And as Vanita mentioned, I am an NITR Rourkela alumnus, class of 2001, computer science. And it is really an honor to be speaking to all of you and kind of walking you through my journey. And so before we get started, a little bit about me, just to extend to what Vanita mentioned. Vanita, can we have the next slide, please? So so as you can see, I was in fact born and raised in Rourkela. My father happens to be an NITR Rourkela alumnus as well. He graduated way back in 1967, so the third batch, and then he served his entire working life at NITR Rourkela. He retired as a professor of civil engineering, and so I kind of followed in his footsteps, you could say. I got my computer science degree, then went on to did my master's at Babson College. And as Vanita mentioned, with regards to the work profile, I have over 20 years of experience, professional experience, having worked with a lot of MNCs, including Infosys, and you have Aetna US Healthcare, where I was based in the US for around 10 years or so. And then I came back to India in 2012, and that is when I launched my first startup, which was the name of it was AllizHealth. And it was completely into healthcare technology, deep tech, and a B2B, you could say, venture. And during the course of the next, 6 years after 2012, I worked, along with my partners. We scaled several heights. We raised a lot of funds, and so on. And in 2018, we were actually acquired by a Singapore-based entity, which is actually an arm of the Reliance Group. So they acquired us in 2018. And then we helped them out with the transition for over a year in 2019. And that's when we finally moved out of our previous venture. And so as Vanita said, it's a matter of great pride for us that the venture that we started, the four of us from my one small living room, we not only raised a lot of funds and so on, but we are now serving clients in almost 5 to 6 different countries, more than 1 million lives that we are helping out. A lot of leading insurance companies and hospitals are on the board. And so that's for the journey in first startup. Then after coming out last year, we founded our second startup, which we call Hooliv. Now Hooliv is completely into student co-living or student accommodation. So all 4 partners, again, the same founding team. We just wanted to take a break from our technology, careers and wanted to do something different. And that's where the genesis of Hooliv lied. And even for Hooliv, because of our, our great exit that we gave in the previous startup, we were successfully able to raise funds for our new startup as well, even before we had hit the ground at a pre-revenue stage. So that's pretty much, about me. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, Vanita, next slide, please. Okay. So what I'm going to, talk to you about today is, I'm not going to, give you a lot of kind of, you could say, lecture or gyan on what is entrepreneurship, all those things. You can easily find it over the net. There are a lot of materials around entrepreneurship, how should you go about it, and so on. So I'm not going to get into all that. But what I'm going to do is, maybe I'm going to take about 30 minutes or so to kind of walk you through my journey, what have been my learnings, and some of the things that we did terribly wrong, some of the things that we did well. Okay. And hopefully by the end of it, if you are able to relate to our journey in any way, take out some good points from what we have gone through, and that kind of helps you with your journey, then I think that's the whole purpose behind this discussion today. Okay. And then after I go through it, I would also I'll open it up for your questions. I would love to take your questions, and you could ask me pretty much anything under the sky, right from registering a company to fundraising to exits, whatever you feel like. This session is for that, to help you out, and not for me to just give a monologue. Okay. So having said that, the first thing that I like to kind of, before we get into what it takes to be an entrepreneur, or how do you get into this journey, it is very essential that first you define what exactly is entrepreneurship. Okay. So and the next slide, please, Wendy. So if you look at it, the way that I would like to define entrepreneurship, you could go into textbooks and you can have all sort of definitions, ranging from starting your own business to being your own boss, to creating jobs, employment. They're all good. They're all good. They're all out there. But what I feel really entrepreneurship is all about is that we live a few years of our life like most people won't. Okay, so that we can spend the rest of our lives like most people can't. So that's the essence of entrepreneurship. I spent over a decade in the US. I did my master's. I worked there, and I could have very well stayed back, just as my friends did, and had a cushy job and a monthly salary to count for. Yet I decided to come back to my country, and driven by the passion to do something. And so when I look back, when I started in 2013, the initial few years was a complete struggle. And a lot of times when you look back, when I was in 2013 and 14, at that period of time, when I used to go into the social media, look at Facebook and all my friends vacationing in Hawaii, somebody traveling, someone buying a new car. So it affects you. It affects you in a big way. But at this point in time, after 10 years of journey, having achieved whatever we have achieved, the modicum of success we have had, if I look now, it's great pride to see that all my friends who are, in jobs, they would like to be in our shoes. They would like to be what we are doing right now, the freedom that we have. So the few years that we spent where most people won't, now I'm living a life that most people can't. So that to me is the true essence of entrepreneurship. Okay. It's not for the faint-hearted. It is a leap of faith. You would be required to sacrifice a lot. So get into it only if your heart is in the right place and you know what you're going to face. Okay. Having said that, what I'm increasingly seeing in the Indian ecosystem is that a lot of people are getting into entrepreneurship for the very wrong reasons. So before we get into how I got into it or what were my driving, my North Star, let's look at some things which you should be looking at. Okay. The next slide, Vanita. Vanita, next slide, please. Okay. Next one. Yeah, thank you. So here are, my friends, some of the reasons that you should be looking at entrepreneurship. Now you're all young graduates. You are, itching to either get into a job or start something of your own. But if your passion behind doing something of your own falls into either of these four categories, that my humble request would be, think over it again. The first one is money. If you are looking to be an entrepreneur, so that you can get rich very quickly, that's a very, very, false notion. You don't get rich quickly. In the famous words of Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he said a beautiful thing. He said, it took me only 12 years to be an overnight success. Okay. So that's the kind of hard work that, Reid Hoffman put to be where he is, to be that rich. Not everybody is a WhatsApp. Not everyone is an InMobi, for instance. So if you're looking to start a venture just because you are driven by the monetary aspect of it, don't get into it. Now, don't take me wrong. I'm not saying that money is not important. Money is important for all of us. It's a very, very crucial aspect. And there is no harm in aspiring to be rich. All of us want to be rich, right? But should not be the driving point behind you getting into entrepreneurship. Now here again, I'll take a small detour and give you kind of an insight into our journey. Once when we were doing AllizHealth, we were filling up an application for some accelerator program. I think I filled up the entire application. I shared it with my team, And they came back and they said, Chinmoy, the application looks great, but you have not mentioned how are we going to make money? You know, because that is something that never stuck to me. We were so passionately driven by making a change, by doing what we are, that money was never a guiding light. And you look at it, I'm not trying to brag in any way, but 6 years down the line, when we got acquired, it was a pretty successful exit. Very rarity in an Indian startup scenario where hardly any startups get exit. So we had a great exit. Yes, we did make our money. We gave a great exit to the investors, but that was all incidental. That came because it was never a guiding point for us. Okay. The second one, again related to it, is fame. Now, if you want to be an entrepreneur just because you want your name to be flashed across to your story or an Inc. 42, or you want people to recognize you and say, hey, that's Vijay Shekhar Sharma, hey, that's the Bunsells walking down, don't. Okay. Think about it again. Fame is not something that will actually help you get over the, you could say, the downtimes that you would have in your startup journey. Okay. So don't run after, the loose fame. The third one, again, I've heard a lot of young entrepreneurs say is that, hey, we want to start a business because we want to be our own boss. That's again a very, very wrong notion, because once you are doing what you're doing as an entrepreneur, I can rest assured you will not be your own boss. You will be answerable to way more people than you would be in a job. You would be answerable to your investors. You will be answerable to your clients. You'll be answerable to your founding team. You'll be answerable to all your other colleagues. You'll be worried about how to get their salaries in place, how to satisfy your client, how to make the investors remain confident on your abilities. So you'd never be your own boss. So don't think about that as a reason behind being an entrepreneur. Okay. And lastly is the herd mentality. Now I know that startup, being an entrepreneur, having a startup, looks very sexy. It sounds sexy because you hear all the time about that. Even our institutes encourage that, and rightfully so. We need more entrepreneurs in the country for sure. And when we have more entrepreneurs, the chances of us producing a Google or a Facebook is much higher. But if you are getting into an entrepreneurship or a startup just because your friend is getting into it, take a step back again, think about it, whether that is the right thing for you to do or you want to do something else. Okay. So these are the reasons that we, as founders, we never pursued. Obviously, at certain point in time, you have one of the other things coming into your mind. You can't help it. We're all humans. We have all our frailties, right? But these can never be a guiding light for you to be an entrepreneur. Okay. So if you think that you fall into any of these categories or any of these reasons are the ones that are driving you to be an entrepreneur, I really request you as a senior, to kind of think back and see, if this is really what you want to do. Okay. So now, having defined what entrepreneurship and the wrong reasons, then we come to the next part of it, is that, say, assuming you have all the right things in place, you have checked all the right boxes, and you have decided that, yes, you want to be an entrepreneur. That is something that is you want to do from within. You don't want to get into a corporate life and corporate job and so on. There are certain things that, just at the beginning of the journey, you should be very careful about few things you should look at. Okay. The first one is finding your right space. Now, when I say finding your right space, it is about, which field that you want to pursue entrepreneurship in. Where is your comfort level? Now, there are two ways that people, generally arrive at a comfort level. One is where you have a deep knowledge about something. For instance, when I came back to India, by the time I had almost, I think, about 12 to 13 years of pure healthcare experience, healthcare technology experience. Then my other partner, Dr. Rashmi, my elder sister, she had a PhD in artificial intelligence. So I was from the business background. She was from deep tech. We had another co-founder who was also from technology. So we kind of, gelled well and said, all right, health tech is something that all of us are very confident about. And that shows when you go and talk to your clients, your prospects, your investors. If you have that kind of domain, deep domain, it comes across. No one can take you for a ride. So choose your space very wisely. If you have just graduated, you have, say, majors in computer science or a major in, chemical or mechanical, you might want to do something which is related to that space. Okay, that is one. The other way to look at it is that I'm not discouraging you to look at other spaces. People might get into an NGO, start something as a social venture. Or you could, even from a computer science graduate, you could start something in chemical engineering, a chemical factory. If you are passionate about that, you figure out that there is a problem and there you have a solution to it, there isn't any stopping. But the whole point, the bigger point behind this is that do figure out your space very, very early. Don't, just be driven by the fact that, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a startup, and let me figure out my space later on. That later on never happens, guys. I've interacted with so many of my friends who want to be entrepreneur or who jumped into it without thinking about what exactly do they want to do, and they had to face a lot of trouble. Okay? So first is your space. The second one, again, since you are just starting out, the essence of having the right team in place can never be ruled out. Okay, you might hear in all conferences, startup conferences, you might hear some of the very successful entrepreneurs, founders always talk about team. Okay, now as Steve Jobs has very rightly said, that if you want to go fast, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, you really should go together. Okay, in a startup, the first few years of the journey, you will have more lows or down times than high times. Okay, and during these down times, you really need a team to kind of talk to each other, to share your problems, to discuss and figure out how to get out of this slump. So everyone, when you have the right team in place, we are covering all the bases, then you can, lean on each other's shoulder and tide over any problems that you might have. Okay, it is not saying that a single person entrepreneur are not successful. There are cases. There are always exceptions to everything, right? But when you are even looking to raise funds, the investors will always appreciate if a team has more than one founding member, because with one founding member, there is that much of risk, right? Now, maybe, God forbid, something happens to you, the sole founder, or maybe you leave the venture. What happens to their money? The business stops. So there is a lot of risk with single founder. So always try to build the right team. And when I say right team, I have 4 founding members in my previous startup. The same one are in my new startup, elder sister, and 2 more. And I can assure you, all 3 of them are way more qualified and way better, than me. And that is the reason I have picked them, because they are better than me. So when you are trying to form a team, whether it is your founding team or your colleagues you're trying to onboard, always try to get someone who is better than you. Okay, that is one aspect, someone who is better than you. The second is someone with a very complementary skill set. Now, I have been in sales all my life, so I needed people to fill in the technology aspects. Okay, I hired a guy, one of the other founding members is from IIM Calcutta, and he comes in with a strategy consulting background, so he's very good in strategy, right? So we try to cover all these bases. So 2 golden rules of hiring any team, guys. 1, hire people who are better than you, and 2nd, hire people who have complementary skill sets. Okay. The third one is again financial security. Now, when you are taking the plunge into being an entrepreneur or into a startup, when we all do that, for the initial few periods, the going could be tough. There could be financial insecurities. Your paycheck stops. You won't be getting a monthly, the salaries. So plan for the rainy day. If you can have a little bit of buffer, if you have, say, a student loan, or if you have a home loan going on, you're helping out your parents and all, take a step back and think if this is the right time for you to be an entrepreneur, or should you be in a corporate job for a while, try to, repay or, get over some of these obligations and then get into a startup. Okay. That is one reason from a very personal kind of background. The other reason also is that you need a little bit of funds for the rainy day. Because say, during a startup, the client was supposed to pay you, but the client hasn't paid on time, but you still need to go ahead and pay the salaries of all the, people working for you. So you can't go and tell them that, hey, look, guys, I won't pay you till the money arrives. You can do it once, you can do it twice, maybe out of, their graciousness, they might agree to you, but you can't be doing it repeated. So you need to dig into your own funds, maybe clear up their salaries. And then when the funds come in from the clients, you reimburse from the company. Okay. So those things can be done. So do provision for a little bit of financial security. So again, as I said, at the beginning, entrepreneurship, the journey is so personal, right? Every one of us have our own context, our little background story. So there is no right or wrong rule. There is no right or wrong way. But just these few things you should be taking care of at the back of your head when you're arriving at the decision that should I even be an entrepreneur right now, or should I wait for some time. Okay. And the last one, guys, and the fourth one, and that is something very close to my heart, is the basic hygiene. Now, since you are starting up, the golden rule would be the first thing that you do is discuss among your team, the founding team, have absolute clarity over the equity distribution, who is holding how much of shareholding, okay? Document that. There are something called founders agreements. So you have a founders agreement between all your founding members so that there is absolutely no ambiguity going forward. That is the first thing that you do. The second thing that you can do is hire a good chartered accountant, right from registering your company to managing all the tax payments, the return filings, the investor documents, your own, invoices and so on. Everything can be, should be done from day zero. And the reason I said it's very close to my heart and, why I'm pushing on this is because when we were getting acquired in 2018, so the Singapore company, they hired a very top-notch CA firm to do all the basic due diligence of our company, both financial as well as, the other legal due diligence. Now, when they did the due diligence, you won't believe at the end of the day, they came out with almost like, I think, 50 points where we had failed. That was the initial starting point. And, we both were like, do we even really go ahead with this acquisition? How are we going to do this? Right from some tedious returns filing being missed to the PF registration not done on time to maybe our, shareholding certificates having overlapping sequence numbers. It was a mess, okay? And the reason it was a mess is because we were all first-time entrepreneurs. We were so passionate about doing what we are doing is that we completely neglected this aspect and we gave it to an outsourced CA firm to do it for us. And they were also lax. And I can't really fault them because all the fault lies with me. As a founder, I should have been more cognizant about what they're doing. But by the time the due diligence came out, some of those things were just impossible to correct. You cannot go back and retrospectively file a tax. You'll have to file a tax today and pay all the penalties. And remember, we registered the company way back in 2012. So, 6 years of penalties and all that. So thankfully, the transgressions were not of a very, very serious nature. Sometimes people even get, penalized or for jail for missing TDS and all. So thankfully, we went at that extent, even though the list was exhaustive, but the points weren't that critical. We could get over that, but we did have to struggle almost. I think the acquisition got delayed by a couple of months just because of these due diligence things. So if you are a first-time entrepreneur, you are getting started, these basic hygienes, guys, I would urge you, be very careful, and it will make your life much easier when you're raising funds or even, looking at an acquisition and so on. Okay, do not compromise on the basic hygiene. So to kind of summarize, so when you are looking to start your journey, these are some of the things that you should look at even before you take the plunge. Okay. So now we come to the next part is that, here again, it's kind of, you could say, a very subjective slide. You hear the pundits across the globe, everybody talks about what makes an entrepreneur successful, what are the qualities an entrepreneur must have, what are the things that they should be doing. Again, folks, don't read too much into it. Every one of us is wired very differently. Our acumen, both in mental acumen and everything, is very different. So don't get into all that. I will just touch upon 4 things that have helped me a lot personally. Okay, the first one is discipline. Now, when you are in the startup ecosystem, everybody keeps telling you, oh, you should be passionate. You should be passionate about this. You should be passionate about that. Trust me, guys, passion is critical. As you can see, it's second on my list. But when the chips are down, when your startup is facing trouble, the first thing that goes out of the window is passion, right? When you have to think about how to pay the salaries of your colleagues or how to resolve an issue for your client, trust me, passion doesn't help. What helps is discipline. Okay, how disciplined are you with your interactions with your client? How disciplined are you in disclosing information to your shareholders or your investors? How disciplined are you in communicating the right things to your colleagues, building that faith, the faith in you? Discipline is something that will always help you get over the tough times. Be disciplined in everything that you do, right from a financial aspects to your communications and so on. So that has helped us a lot in our journey, is discipline. The second is, of course, goes without saying, passion. unless you're passionate about what we're doing, it's very difficult to make sacrifices. And trust me, in this journey, you will have to make a lot of sacrifices. Okay. And here again, if I take a small, digress a bit, everyone speaks about, oh, as an entrepreneur, you have to make sacrifices. You have to make sacrifices. But what we have realized is more than the entrepreneur, it is the entrepreneur's family which makes a bigger sacrifice. It will be your siblings, your parents who will be making a bigger sacrifice. Why? Because they would like you to fulfill your dreams at the cost of their own dreams. Right? Your dad might want you to join a corporate job so that you can earn something, pay off his loan, and build a better house for him. But the moment you go to him and say, "And Dad, I want to start my own job," he would put his dreams away to see you fulfill yours. So our families make a bigger sacrifice, guys. So really be passionate. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, don't do it. I might sound harsh, but that's the reality. Okay, you can't be playing with your family members' emotions. Okay. The third thing is integrity. Very, very crucial. And that is what helped us earn a lot of good karma with our investors, with our clients. Now, even today, I could get even out moving out of my earlier venture, I could still get on to, say, the CEO of a Star Health or an ICICI Lombard on my phone. That's because of the integrity that we built with them. We never lied. We always communicated it, what is, the reality is. It is what it is. And everybody, trust me, in one of our final, just before the acquisition, when we were having the final investor call, one of our investors came and said, and they in fact are the owners of the largest female contraceptives in India. She came onto the line and said, "Chinmoy, I never attend a startup, investor call, but I always make a point to attend your call because all that I see in your deck is honesty." So always maintain that honesty and integrity. And the third one is definitely tenacity. You just can't have the bone which, pushes you to give up. That is, entrepreneurship is not for the faint-hearted. You need to keep on trying. In our previous venture, we signed up with a client called Metropolis Labs, one of the largest diagnostic chains in India. You won't believe the first time I reached out to them was in 2014. We signed up with them in 2018, after 4 years. And in those 48 months, I must have followed up with them 48 times, once every month, without missing a single time. Put it in your CRM, put it in your calendar. You can always send a polite request to these guys. They won't mind. And they came back when they were ready and they signed up. Okay. So that's the kind of follow-up that you need to do, whether it is with your investors, if you want to do something, or whether it is with, your clients or partners or whoever it is. Okay. Tenacity is the key. Right? So these are the 4 things that have helped us a lot. Maybe for you, the priority of one could be higher than the other. Again, it's a very individual thing, very personal thing. But trust me, these are the 4 things that you would like to keep it as close to your heart as possible. Okay. So then we come to the last part of what I have to talk about is smart and hard work. Now, when you look at all your friends who are entrepreneurs, or even hear stories, read stories about entrepreneurs. I know if you look at the, I'm forgetting his name, from, Funny, right? The Red Bus guy. I believe he went without a salary for 4 or 5 years, before he could hit the jackpot. If you pick up any entrepreneurial story, you pick up any, entrepreneur, you will always see the background as being of hard work. Hard work is a given. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to have a startup, it is almost given that you will have to work your ass off. There is no true opinion about that. But what separates the Flipkarts or, the Baijus or the Zohos, I love Zoho as a company, by the way, and I think it's the finest Indian startup. So if you look at companies like Zoho and Flipkarts, the one thing that separates them from a lot of other players is smart work. Hard work is given, it is understood. But what makes the great from the ordinary, that separates the great from the ordinary, is smart work. Okay, and that is what you should inculcate. The first thing is network. Right now, I am personally a very extremely extrovert guy. I can walk up to anyone on the street and I can start chatting. Right, I can start talking, and that kind of helped us a lot in terms of building my relationship with investors. I could walk into any networking event. I could pitch my idea to an investor. And look, at the end of the day, why do we shy away from building this network or talking to people is because we are scared of a rejection. We're scared that people might say no. As an entrepreneur, you have to have such a thick skin that it shouldn't really bother you. You trust me, when you're looking to raise funds, you write to 100 investors, only 5 will respond, maybe 1 will, fund you. That's the conversion ratio for any company. Even for a Flipkart or a Zoho or a Baiju, that's the conversion rate because nobody knows you when you're starting up, right? So you need to have an extremely thick skin to rejection. And the moment you have that, you will not be shy to go up and talk to anyone. What's the worst that could happen? Someone might say no, so be it. Who cares, right? So build your network. You have a phenomenal NIT Rourkela alumni, people in great positions, wonderful entrepreneurs. All that you need to do is reach out to them. So don't be shy in that, okay? The second aspect is validate. Now, since you are just starting out, you need to validate your ideas. Run it by a few people who you feel would be unbiased and would like to see you successful. Run it by them, and get opinions. I have a lot of startups that I mentor as part of Startup Odisha. A few startups from NIT Rourkela itself who approach me. I help them out with certain aspects because I have no, personal bias against that, or I have no vested interest. I just do it because they are from my alma mater, right? So validate their idea. And there is also a funny joke. And if, in fact, you can try it. If you have a business idea today, the best person to run it by is your mother. Go and run it by her. If she says that this is a good venture to do, drop it immediately. Don't do it. And if she says that you should be doing it, that's the venture you should do it. Why? Because mothers will never like to see their kids take risk, right? Moment they say that a venture is worth doing, you know that there is very little risk in it, and hence the rewards are negligible, okay? And moment she says that don't do it, the risks are very high, and that's the one you should be doing. So kind of a rough, crude method, but validate your ideas, okay? The third thing are the terminologies, right? You need to work on speaking the language. If you are into the startup game, if you want to rub shoulders with the best, if you want to approach an investor and speak in their language, you need to know what is a term sheet, what are valuations, what are dilutions, what is a claw forward, are term sheets binding or not, what is a shareholding agreement, right? What is an ESOP pool? These terms should be at your tip of your tongue, right? Things like, Vinita, can you just go to the next slide quickly, please? Yeah, things like this, I put together a very sample. I'll share the deck later. It's like a decoder ring. I share it with a lot of startups, is that when you are looking to raise funds, depending on the stage you are, whether you are bootstrap, whether you should approach friends and family, incubators, accelerators, angel investors, venture capital, what stage, what amount, how much dilution typically you can look at, what is the time frame to complete a transaction, what is the cost of doing it, what is the exit criteria. Now, this is just a sample, but these are the terms that I would like all of you to familiarize yourself with. And trust me, when I talk to a lot of startups from Odisha and all, I feel that there is a slight gap when it comes to speaking this language. Get over your inhibitions, read all these things, talk to us, call us up and say, hey, Chinmoy, I don't understand what is a claw forward. Oh, my term sheet has an anti-dilution clause. What does it relate to, right? You need to be aware of these things. Okay? Vanita, can we go back, please? The fourth factor is the noise cancellation. Now, this again is very crucial, guys. It happened to us during our first startup when we used to read about, some XYZ startup raising 10 million, someone else with an inferior product raising 50 million. And we were like, what the heck are we doing? We have a better product. We have better clients. Why aren't we able to raise funds? You get into this, subconsciously you get into this rat race, okay, where you're influenced by what's happening all around you. You read a news, I'm not able to do this, right? So there is a lot of noise around it. Be very careful. And also because of, the way the social media works, the more that you read about something, the more that the feed is about that, right? So you're surrounded by that noise all the time. The only, thing that you should be concerned about is what your clients are saying. That is the only sound that you should be listening to. Everything else is noise, okay? Filter it off, right? And then the final point, guys, is about ambiguities. Now, this is my favorite, topic. Now, when I went to Babson, Babson is a mecca for entrepreneurship. It's the world's best school for entrepreneurship, right? The day we stepped in, the first thing our dean told us is that he said, look, entrepreneurship cannot be taught, but we would let you try out whatever you aspire to, whatever you dream of doing. You do it, and we want you to fail. Fail fast so that you can learn and not commit those same mistakes again, right? That's one thing that he said. The second thing that he said, and at that point in time, I was unable to relate to it. He said, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to have a startup, make ambiguities your best friend. Okay. And at that point in time, we were like, what does it even mean? But when we were into our journey, the first startup, now the second startup, we realized the true meaning of those pearls. It was like pearls of wisdom. What he actually meant was that in a startup, everything is ambiguous. You don't know what you're going to do in the next 1 hour. Forget, a long-term plan or a short-term vision. Those are all for optics. Trust me, you don't even know what's going to happen in the next 1 hour. It is so ambiguous. You'd be sitting in your cabin, suddenly all of a sudden, your colleague comes to you and says, Chinmoy, I want to quit. You've invested in that person, you have done everything, and the person just quits, right? Or your client just picks up the phone and says, hey, look, one of your competitors is offering me this for free. Would you be able to do it? Otherwise, I'll just go with them, right? All of a sudden, out of the blue. So ambiguities is something that you just can't fight, in a startup. You will have to make them your best friend. You will just have to live with it. And the sooner you make that peace with ambiguity, the better it is. You will start making quicker decisions, right? Quicker decisions, guys, not better decisions. That's a whole different thing. But you will be starting to make quicker decisions. You will be able to, think on your feet. You will not be complacent. Ambiguities never let you be complacent. You will always be on your feet. There will be always the other firefighting that you will be doing, and that keeps you on your toes, and that doesn't make you complacent, right? So make ambiguities your best friend. Trust me, as you're just starting out, 5 years down the line, you will remember this, what Chinmoy told on that day, that make ambiguities your best friend. Okay. So wrapping it up, it's not just the hard work, guys, that is understood. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, and I'm pretty sure, being from an IT, the stage that you've already reached, you have built a certain credibility with the entire, the ecosystem. Being in an IT is not a joke. It's a great achievement. Everyone does the hard work going forward, but what will separate you from the crowd is doing smart work. And don't shy away from reaching out to us. Okay. So that's pretty much, friends, that all I wanted to talk to you about our journey and the way that we went ahead with. So, to wrap it up, feel free to connect with me or with any other alumni for any help that you need when you're starting this journey, right from regulatory aspects to fundraising, to validating your ideas, or if you're even going with a personal problem, if you want to just discuss with somebody, mental health issues are very predominant in entrepreneurs. Talk about anything, pick up the phone. We're always a phone call away. So I'll leave you with my email and my phone number. Please take a note and feel free to reach out anytime. Okay. So that's all from my side. And Vanita, I would love to take the questions here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chinmoy sir. This is indeed a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Q&A session, I would like to read a few questions we received from our students. The
Sure.
first question is from Hari. What would be the 3 things you would suggest for a growing, sustainable, autonomous startup?
Sure. Nice question, Hari. And, the 3 things, if I have to pick up the 3 things that have helped us, and I believe in general helps any startup to be sustainable and scalable. One is, listening to your clients. Your clients are the best source of feedback for you. They are the best source of funds, right? Now, if your clients are speaking to you about something, listen to that very carefully. And if your clients are speaking about you to others, that's the best thing that you can aspire for. So always listen to your clients. They come first before anything else. Okay. The second thing is possibly on your product or your services. Don't wait for too long to be out there. What we call as a minimum viable product or so on. Launch it. Get a feedback. As Alok Vajpayee from Ixigo has said very rightly, that if your first launch doesn't shame you, then you're too late, right? So get out there, get feedback, iterate on your product or services, make it better. So keep on continuously doing it. So unless you keep continuously innovating or on your product, you will very soon be left out by a competitor. They will catch up. Someone else will come in with much deeper pockets, and they will do what you're doing in a fraction of a time. Okay, so first is client, second is your own product, and kind of iteratively improving upon it. And the third one, which very rarely people get mention about, is about your colleagues or about your team. As a startup, as I said, if you want to be scalable, you want to be sustainable, your human capital is your biggest asset, right? You want that core group of people to be with you no matter what, and they are the ones who believe in your vision, and they believe in what what you are saying as the next steps and so on. So always keep those group of people along with you, group of people happy and contented. They would be a real asset, and they will help you build a scalable business. So you look at right from the history, you look at groups like Infosys, right? Maybe it's Infosys or even InMobi or Zoho. The core team is what has always remained and what has always helped them scale. So Vanita, those would be my 3 picks for her. Hey Vanita, you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Can we get to the next question?
Okay. So this second question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I move on to the second question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is from Sunil. What is the difference between businessman and entrepreneur?
It's a tough question, Sunil. Maybe that's what gets talked about all the time: the difference between Mukesh Ambani and Ratan Tata, right? Maybe Ratan Tata is an entrepreneur and Mukesh Ambani is a businessman. But there isn't any right or wrong way to look at it. I think as entrepreneur, when we start off, we all start off with a great passion, a goal in our hearts, and that's what separates us from the rest of the crowd. But at some point in time, I think we'll all have to turn businessmen. We'll have to look at the business aspect of it, because a lot of people's hopes are riding on what we are doing. So I don't think you can maybe you could say that all businessmen are entrepreneurs, but not all entrepreneurs are businessmen. Maybe that's the way, but I don't think there is a very clear cut definition of the two that separates out the two. I think it's a very fine line, and at some point in time, all entrepreneurs need to be businessmen, unless you want to just do maybe a NGO or a social service. That's separate. You need not look at the business aspect of it. But if you're looking at a for-profit, I think all of us are businessmen at some point.
Wonderful. The second one is from Hare Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
What are your insights on fresh students to become an entrepreneur? What are the challenges faced by the freshers in practical world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we are just graduating out, fresh students, there are both good and bad. Right now, the good part of it is that we have never got the taste of the corporate life. We have never become complacent, and we have never let the mediocrity set in. That is what happened to me personally when I was with 10 years working in the US. I think at some point in time I felt, what am I even doing? I'm just becoming mediocre, just like everybody else in this rat race. And that's the time when I decided to take the plunge into entrepreneurship. So maybe as a student, you don't have that fear. It's very much like Hare Krishna. It's very much like when you're learning to ski, right? When you're learning to ski as an adult, it's very tough to learn because you know what happens when you fall. But for a kid who has no fear, who doesn't know what happens when he or she falls, they can learn very easily, right? So I think that's the benefit that you have when you're starting out very young as a student. You don't know, things that you don't know. But on the flip side of it, the disadvantage is that having been in a corporate life for a number of years, you just know how to read certain situations better. You know how to read people. You know how to read your clients. When your client is saying something but meaning something else, you know how to maybe you're more professional in your approach when you're approaching an investor, okay, or maybe approaching your prospects. So I think there are both pros and cons. So as a student, I think you start out from a great point. You don't have be afraid of the failure. But on the flip side of it, maybe the wisdom that we gain from the experience, that is what you're missing out on. But yeah, I won't place too much emphasis on that, because personally, if I have to do this all over again, I would start the day I graduated, because the journey is so fulfilling, and so rewarding in itself, that, you makes you wonder, why was he even doing a job anymore? So Hare Krishna, that's what I feel, is how you should look at it if you're starting fresh.
Right. This one is from Subha. Who was your inspiration when you were a child?
Sudha, I mean, inspirations definitely when you are a kid, you just don't look beyond your parents, right? I think they were phenomenal inspirations, and they continue to be my inspiration. And my wife too. My wife and me graduated from Babson, same class. So she, being from an entrepreneurship background, she supports me a lot in everything that I do. So I think, first my parents, then my wife, they're all big inspirations to me, in the way that my parents, in fact, to share a funny story. So when I quit my job and I started, AllizHealth, when I told my dad that, hey, Dad, I quit my job and I've started this thing. So you won't believe, for the next 2 to 3 months, whenever we speak, you would say, it's great that you have started something of your own, but you shouldn't have quit your job. So despite all that, despite being in service all his life, my mom runs an NGO, by the way. So they've always supported me, and there cannot be no bigger inspirations than them and my wife now. And if I look outside, so that then definitely people like, Narayan Murthy, when I joined Infosys as a, fresh graduate out of NITR, and I was standing in the cafeteria one day, and when I turned, and I could see my friends go all silent who were in front of me, and I didn't know what the reason was. And when I looked back, and Narayan Murthy was standing there with a tray in his hand right behind me, taking food just like everybody else. The humility of that man, with what he has achieved, the humbleness of it, I think those are phenomenal inspirations that I look up to. People like him, people like Elon Musk, for example. Elon Musk may do a lot of crazy things, might tweet a lot of crazy stuff, but the kind of dreams that he sees, the audacity of those dreams, like, when the world is struggling with quarantine and lockdown, this guy is sending people to space stations, right? Building autonomous vehicles. Whatever be the flaws of the man, we all have flaws, right? But sheer audacity of his dreams, that's what inspires people like us, people like entrepreneurs like us, right? So Sudha, this would be where I draw my inspirations from.
Okay. This one is from Purushottam. How to survey local market demands?
Purushottam, there can be several ways. Earlier, maybe 10 years back, you had no other option but to do maybe a, door-to-door kind of survey, or depending on the business, you might, for example, if I'm in a student co-living venture, for me to do a, assessment would be to stand outside a college or a coaching institute and ask students their opinion on something like this. So that used to be the case maybe 10 years back. But if you want to launch an MVP, you want to, get a local feel of it, I think the world has moved to WhatsApp campaigns, SMS campaigns, surveys over WhatsApp, or even social media, other social media campaigns, Instagrams and, Facebooks, LinkedIn's. I think you should seriously look at those kind of channels, because A, that save you a lot of time and money. And secondly, you can also reach a much wider audience through that. So it need not just be your own local demography, but you could reach similar pockets elsewhere too. Now, for instance, if I want to start my venture in Bhubaneswar, in a tier 2 city, I need not restrict my survey just to Bhubaneswar, but I could also include population from Cuttack or from Rourkela or even Patna, Bokaro and so on, which is very tough to do and expensive if I'm doing a word-to-word or a door-to-door kind of survey. But over social media and all, it's much easier to have that reach, right? So if you want to just validate your product in a local market, I think use the social media as the best way, and WhatsApp campaigns and all are always there. And yeah, maybe a little bit of field trip will also help you, with you as the founder personally going and talking to people, showing them your solution, asking them to use it, might give you a feedback which could be invaluable, right? So these are the two ways, Purushottam, that I could think of.
Okay, this question is from Sunil. What are the personal skills required to be an entrepreneur, and how to get funding for any startup?
Sure. So there are a couple of questions in that, Sunil. One is the personal traits that you required. So as I talked to in one of the slides, the personal trait that, it's again, very individual thing. And we all have, some of us stronger traits. We all have our vices. For instance, personally, I am a very, very patient person. In fact, a lot of my investors have asked me, Chinmoy, do you do meditation? How can you be so calm? Even when you're successful or even when it is down, how can you be so calm? So in fact, on that, Sunil, once we had that we really messed up with the client. Now the client called up and kept shouting, and she was blasting on the phone. And I was responding pretty calmly. Then she stopped all of a sudden and said, "Chinmoy, I'm shouting at the top of my voice. How can you be so calm?" And then my response was, "Look, even if if I scream back, it's not going to solve the problem. So it's better to remain calm and solve it rather than to scream and shout your head off and try to solve it." So I think the personal traits varies a lot, Sunil, but things which really hold you is how calm you are under stress, and also when you are successful. Okay. Because if you're not calm when you're successful, it gets into your head, right? It makes you become hot-headed, with a chip on your shoulder and so on. So be calm all the time. Everything will pass. There's no problem in this world which can't be solved. That's one. And secondly, if I have to pick, Sunil, it is discipline. And I think that comes from my background with my father being a professor, my mom running an NGO. We came from a very, background in education, and also that instilled a lot of discipline in me. I really don't send off a bad email to a customer or a colleague. I take my time. I'm disciplined in the way that I use my money. So I think these two traits, Sunil, would really help you being calm, even under duress. And second is being disciplined in everything that you do. That would be my two top picks, but obviously, Sunil, it varies from person to person.
This one is from Ajay Verma. Sir, I'm computer graduate and good at R&D. My mind always tickles with lots of ideas. What can I follow up?
Sure. And before we get into that, Vanita, I think I missed the second part of Sunil's question about how to raise funding. Right. So again,
Yes.
Sunil, there is a lot of avenues, as I showed you, depending on what stage you are. If typically you are just at an idea stage, now in India, it is very difficult to find investors at a napkin stage. It happens in the Bay Area, but not in India. Angel investing in India, unfortunately, is still not recognized as an asset class. So if you have an idea, I think the best place to look at is bootstrapping, put in your own fund and take it to a certain stage. And then you can always look at what we call FFS, friends, family, and fools, right? So you can always go to your friends and family to pitch in some funds, or maybe find some, guy who doesn't do anything but has a lot of money. So you can look at friends, family, and fools as the second step. But if you have certain thing up and running, you have a certain validation of your product or your service or your idea, you have some paying customers, then there are a lot of opportunities in India with respect to incubators, accelerators, angel funding group like Mumbai Angels, India Angels, Hyderabad Angels, Kolkata Angels. There are a lot of angel groups that you should really approach if you have some paying customers. And if you have a good track record going, then maybe you can skip the entire angel stage and look at institutional funding, which could be the VCs, for a seed round or a pre-seed round and so on. So it really depends on what stage you are. So the chart that I showed you, the table, that kind of helps you, in terms of, so drop me a note later on, since this discussion was not centered around fundraising, so I didn't really get into that, but we could always have a separate chat offline. Okay. So yeah, Vanita, the next question was from who?
Yes, this is again from Ajay Verma. I would like to repeat it.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm a computer graduate and good at R&D. My mind always tickles with lots of ideas. What can I follow up?
Yeah, absolutely, Ajay. That's a great sign that you are seeing opportunities, lots of them opportunities. But as I spoke to in one of the points in my deck, is that you really need to figure out which idea you can do justice to. Now, if sitting here, if I say that I'm going to build a semiconductor chip which can cure Parkinson's, that's something really out of my league. Now, while the idea could be great, but that's out of my league, my competency, I just can't do it. Right? Not personally, I have to build a team and all that thing. So as I said, if you have this multiple of ideas, that's a great thing. Try to focus on where your strengths lies. If you can do justice to any of these ideas, right? Something which falls based on your domain knowledge, that you can take it up, or something that you're really passionate about, right? Now, when we were looking, just my personal example, we moved from healthcare technology to student housing, completely different space, right? But when we were something that we're passionate about, we saw that this is a great space. Students struggle with their housing. There are poor, unhygienic housing and so on. So there was an opportunity to make a difference here. And that's how we got into it. So validate your ideas based on these two parameters. One, where you have either knowledge, or second, you have really passionate about it. If nothing else, keep jotting down these ideas and run it by people like us. You're the NIT. Yeah, Vanita, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this question is from Sai Vaishnavi. What
Okay.
to do if the same idea has been done and put forward by someone else just before we launch?
Ah, Um, Vaishnavi, trust me, that would happen all the time. Okay. Now, ideas are worth nothing. Ideas are dime a dozen, as we say. And whatever idea you have, trust me, there will be 10,000 people at that same point in time thinking about the same thing and trying to do the same thing, right? You don't need to be very different. You don't need to be the only one doing it. There are benefits to other people also doing it. Now, Flipkart is doing what Amazon is doing, what Shopclose is doing, what local Kirana is doing, what, Alibaba is doing. Everyone is doing the same thing, right? But they're all successful. Okay. So there are a few things that matter. One, if you are about to launch something and somebody else has already launched it, that's great. That's actually a validation of your idea. That goes to show that what you are trying to do has merit in it, because someone else is also trying to do the same thing, you know and you will always have competition. If not today, tomorrow you will have competition, so you cannot shy away from that. You will have a lot of people doing the exact same thing that you are doing, either when you're trying to launch, or even when you have launched it and you are working on your startup, there might be 10 other people trying to clone you. So you cannot run away from that. So trust me, if someone else is doing what you are doing, that is a great sign. Okay, that's one. And second thing is, you know you ideas can come and go. Ideas mean nothing. All that depends on is the execution. You might have the other people that you're talking about, they might have the same idea as you are, but they might do poor execution, while you might succeed in a better execution. So don't give up just because someone is trying to do the same thing. It doesn't matter. It's, in fact, is a good sign. Okay. And yeah, it all depends on the execution, how well you're able to execute, right? Having said that, always keep an eye on them, like people running in a race, right? They always keep track of who's behind them, who's looking over their shoulder. So always, kind of look on your shoulder and say who's behind you. But don't give too much significance to someone else trying to do what you are doing. That doesn't matter. That will happen irrespective. Okay.
This one is from Vaishnavi again. Can we
Mm-hmm.
contact you for mentorship?
Oh, absolutely, Vaishnavi. I would be glad to help. I think would you be sharing the details with everyone, Vaishnavi?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, Vanita, so please share the details, Vanita, so that people, absolutely,
For
Vaishnavi.
sure, sir.
Sure.
For sure. So this is from Aditya. What are some of the business ethics an entrepreneur must have?
Aditya, as I talked about, one is definitely the integrity. Never ever lie or take anyone for a ride, whether it is your investor, whether it is your client, or your colleagues. I think integrity just, it's builds your character, right? And it builds a lot of good karma with everyone. So never ever lie to anyone on anything. That's number one for me. And secondly, any business dealing that you do, and that this I learned not from my previous venture, but when I was working, from a wonderful gentleman that I had a boss, so he was the founder of that startup, and where I was working in Boston. And he told me a great thing, Aditya, what he told me. He said that never share an agreement which is one-sided. Always make an agreement which is balanced. So you cut down on iteration, you build trust, and you sign it much sooner than having a one-sided agreement. What the bigger point he wanted to convey was, in all your dealings, always be fair to both the parties. You will see that the deal execution happens much faster. Okay. So for me, Aditya, integrity is a must. There is absolutely no compromise on that. There is no tolerance on integrity. And second, always being fair and balanced. Okay? So these would be my top two picks. Aditya. Any entrepreneur must have. If someone is not honest, someone compromises in integrity, even when you are going ahead and raising funds, or even talking to clients where you feel that they're not honest enough with you and you doubt their integrity, walk away from that. That marriage is going to end up bad. So walk away when you have still time. Okay. Next, Vanita.
This question is from Shravya. What is the importance of doing an MBA before starting a company?
That's a great point. Actually, so it's not required. I mean, to be The short answer, no, you don't need an MBA for starting up. Okay. You absolutely don't need an MBA. You look at any Kirana store, walk into them, they would know the business fundamentals better than any MBA graduate. Okay. And they are running a profitable Kirana store. They know the simple fundamental of business is that your cash inflow should be greater than your cash outflow. There is absolutely nothing else to the business. And the Kirana stores, they understand these to perfection. Okay. So you don't need an MBA to start up anything. Where an MBA might help, right, is on the softer side of things. When you go for an MBA, for instance, when I went for my MBA to Boston, you meet people from different countries, different ways of doing business, different perspectives of how things are done, different ways of dealing with people with different kind of backgrounds, right? These softer things are what helps you when you're looking to expand, when you're looking to go global, right? This network that you build when you're in an MBA, or this friendship that you build with people from different cultures and contexts, the softer aspects are something that really helps you when you're trying to expand, okay, or trying to go global. Now, for my student housing, you won't believe that a friend of mine from Mexico is into exactly the same business, right? And from my MBA days, so he's my friend from MBA days, he's doing exactly the same thing in Mexico. So what we ended up doing, we said, hey, look, we can have a collaboration where we can have our students as exchange program. People in our co-living venture can travel to Mexico, and Mexico students can travel here, and we will provide them internship, right? So this is where an MBA helps, is on the softer or the outlook part of it. It just widens your horizon. But do you need an MBA to start a business? No, you don't.
This
Okay.
one is from Shravya again.
Mm-hmm.
If we are to start an entrepreneurship journey all alone, how can I gather a suitable supporting team?
Shavya, as I said, there is no thumb rule against doing it alone. Many people have done it alone. Great people have done it successfully, but those are exceptions. For various reasons, you will need to have a team with you when you are getting started. And the best way to have a team is, again, to look within your own network, within your friends and family. If there is someone who equally believes in your idea, who is as passionate about your idea as you are, and someone who wants to work with you for the very idea and not for the money, those are the people that you can look to get onto your team. Even when you go to networking, for instance, one of my CIOs currently, Mr. Gaurav, I found him at a networking event when I was starting up back in 2013. We just happened to meet at a networking event. I said, hey, look, I'm looking for a technology person. And he said, yeah, I'm looking to work with a startup. That's how we met. And now it's been, 8 years in our marriage. So you need to find those kind of people who believe in your idea and the same passion. But my 2 cents, Shavya, would be that do find a team, because it becomes very difficult for a one person, to lead a business. You will have so many things that you need to decide on. So many times that you will, have bad days. You will hit the bed in the night thinking that let there be no tomorrow. I don't want there to be, there to be a tomorrow. So those are the kind of struggles that you go through as an entrepreneur. And it always helps to have a team around you. You can bounce off these things with your team. They can help ease the pressure of you, and yeah. And then the final point, Shava, is that it's just impossible for one person to be good at everything. When you're actually running a startup and you have these business problems which come in, trust me, a business problem never comes in a silo. A problem is not just a marketing problem or an HR problem or a client problem. Everything is interrelated. You decide to, give a discount to a client on a prospect, on a prospective deal. You get less money in your company. You can't give the hike that you wanted to give to your colleagues. So see how the two things are related, right? So you absolutely can't be good at everything. So it's good to have a team which covers all these bases, people who are experts in those specific things, and then know how to deal with certain situations, right? So Savya, so my simple point would be build a team, look at your network first, look at the alumni, slightly keep widening your radius from your network, then look at the alumni, bigger alumni, or maybe even go out to startup events. A lot of startup events you can attend, and you can find team members from there too. But do be very, very, cautious in who you onboard, and don't onboard someone unless your wavelengths match. Don't go with the degrees of a person, or the pedigree of a person, but only if the wavelength match, then you should be looking at hiring that person. Okay.
Okay, this is the question which I received through an email. Can
Okay.
you please explain few most important things as an entrepreneur needs to have access to begin with?
Yeah, so, as one of the things I pointed out is that the basic hygiene part, you should definitely have a chartered accountant with you, not on payrolls, obviously, but freelancing. You should have an outsourced chartered accountant who can help you not only with the company formation and all, but even going forward, all the taxation and everything. So chartered accountant is a must. The second one is a lawyer. For every document that you sign, whether it is with your investor, client, or employees, or your co-founders, it has to go through a lawyer. There are no shortcuts to it. So chartered accountant and lawyer are a must. And the third thing, have a group of mentors. People, as I said, who have an unbiased opinion about you, who have no vested interest. They don't need necessarily be monetarily involved with you. Those are the right kind of people who will be willing to help you. And so these are the three things I think you should really have when you're starting out: mentors, chartered accountants, lawyers.
Great. So I would like to end this Q&A session with one last question, sir. So
Mm-hmm.
what are the financial requirements for a student to start his entrepreneurship journey?
Um, it depends again, whoever gentleman has asked that question, it depends again, my friend. It depends on the type of business that you want to start. If you just want to launch an app, you don't need hardly any investment. You can just pool in your own, savings or get something from your siblings or parents and you can launch an app, right? But if you want to set up a factory, for instance, then obviously you will need a different scale of funds. So it depends on the type of business that you want to start. But again, having said that, since a lot of you from technology backgrounds and you want to do some technology startup, I don't think you should at the beginning you should worry too much about having a lot of cash. You always have resources, as I pointed out, where you can tap into for funds, angel investors, HNIs. So there are a lot of HNIs who are interested in getting into startups. So you can tap into HNIs, angel groups, accelerators, incubators. So you can tap into all those groups for funding. But yes, if you're looking at a technology kind of startup, I don't think you'll need to have a whole lot of finances in place before you can take the jump, right?
Okay. Excellent, sir. With that being said, I hope we reach the end of our today's session. Thank you so much, Chinmay sir, for your time.
Thank you, Vanita.
So I have shared Chinmay sir's LinkedIn account in chat window. I hope you all can see that.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Vanita. And please do share my email and phone as well. So if anyone wants to connect with me, please feel free, guys. I would love to help you out.
Okay, sir. Okay. So 1 minute, sir. I'll be sharing the same in chat window.
Sure.
Or else we can drop an email to all our attendees.
Absolutely.
Okay. So emails with e-certificates will be distributed to our participants. With a single click, students can generate their e-certificate if they have 80% attendance for this session. So thank you so much, Chinmay sir. With your permission, I would like to end today's session.
Thank you, Vanita. Really appreciate chatting with all. Really
Thank you
appreciate
for joining with us, sir. Thank you.
it. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.